the USHBA is working on helping set up some of those standards and getting to that point. But in general, the general consensus is as close to 0% dust as possible, and then fiber 5 to 10% at most, loosely within, but not like clumps of fiber or anything like that.
Let's talk about the power of hemp, from the farm field to finished goods. Learn all about it at the 2022 Midwest iHemp Expo, May 20th through 21st at the Lansing Center. Visit MidwestIHempExpo.com. See you there.
And the fiber is what you would use for like textiles, stuff like that, paper, or like the hemp board, hemp wood, those kinds of things. And then the inner woody core part basically looks like wood chips when we get it, refine it. It's just the inside core of the stalk, and then cleaned up and sized properly.
So how clean do you need that to be? Can there be fiber in that herd that you get, or you need it pretty well just the herd?
Pretty clean, yeah. It's kind of up in the air right now because there's no set standards in the US. So we kind of go off best practices and what we've seen in places like Europe that have already established standards. So the USHBA is working on helping set up some of those standards and getting to that point. But in general, the general consensus is as close to 0% dust as possible, and then fiber 5 to 10% at most, loosely within, but not like clumps of fiber or anything like that. So you really want a pretty clean mix. There could be advantages to having a little bit of fiber, but definitely don't want to have too much fiber.
Now you said USHBA, so US Hemp Building Association is what you're talking about there. Are you working with them then to develop the standards for this, or are you on the board?
So I'm a regional leader, and then I just took on a new role in that group to help with establish some test plans for Hempcrete and comparative testing. I kind of fell into the role based on a project that I have coming up, but we need data collected for that project. So I asked to partner with USHBA, and now I'm leading a group in there. But it's been good. We're getting people involved that will help get that going. So it's good.
Careful what you ask for, huh?
Sometimes, yeah. But I mean, if it's going to get done, I mean, might as well. The only way it's going to get done is if I help. So.
Yeah. Well, appreciate that. Well, are you providing your own supply for your product now, or are you still outsourcing?
Yeah, so and we'll continue to buy other material. There's just too much complexity in processing where it's its own entity in and of itself. And so we'll continue to partner, but we get material from all over the place right now, and so we're working on material from Kansas, Minnesota, hopefully Montana soon, and I'm hoping this year we'll be able to use North Dakota processed hemp herd for our project, which will be the closest we can get, the most regionalized, which is ultimately the goal is for every state to have one or more processors for their own material.
Do you have a decorticator that any recommendations on decorticator? Because that's something we're looking into here in Michigan, is to set up some processing.
Yeah, there's a couple good options, ones that are relatively affordable. I know Formation Ag has a good product. They're out of Colorado. And then Egg Processing is one that's based in Montana. And there's a little bit more unique because they can accept CBD type stocks. The way it processes is a little bit different than traditional. And so you can take a wider scope of materials into their processing, which is interesting. There's definitely more options out there. A lot of them start to get really expensive though, where you're talking.
The one you just described, what kind of financial ballpark are we in on that?
I would be just a guess. I know you're going to be under probably around $500,000 or so would be a safe bet on some scalable equipment there. I think you can do it for a bit less than that to start out though. Anything over $1 million is getting to be a pretty complex system where you're going with a company with a reputation that there's some high expectations there and some minimal outputs you need to make it worthwhile.
Yeah.
I have a process that I can do, decorticate the CBD plants, but meeting your standards as far as the minimal dust and the 5%. I don't think I can quite do that yet with the machine we have. It's good for making bedding and things like that. We certainly can do that with that for sure. So, and we're still trying to figure out what to do with the fiber, because the fiber is a little shorter fiber than the longer plants are. Now, are you so you're not contracted with any growers there to grow for you to make your product? You're just working right with the manufacturers.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And when we were talking about processing in state, I'll probably be a little bit more hands-on with in that process and helping facilitate those conversations to help get farmers on board. But yeah, mostly I stick on the part of supporting the process as much as possible until it's processed and ready for me to buy and put into an end product.
Well, let's get into your panels. Can you show us what that consists of and how you got to where you're at now?
Yeah, sure thing. I'll share out my screen right here. I'll give you a quick visual. So we started with just this really base proof of concept design. Let's see. Can you see the screen with a house on it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So we started with this base design. This is just a 150 square foot structure, just to really prove out the use of the panels that we have. So I'll show you the panels here in a minute, but just simple concept, just to get our foot in the door. We're kind of at a point in the industry for hemp building where there's lots of general interest in the product. There's a small group of people that are super interested, ready to pull the trigger on the house. There's a lot that are in that bucket of like still trying to figure out what hempcrete is, why it makes sense. And so those people are kind of willing to take a little step forward with the product. And so that's kind of what this was intended for, was for people that aren't ready to buy a full house, but might want to build like a backyard office or like a mother-in-law suite. So this is kind of the outside
good
layout.
For a studio, probably have great acoustics.
Yep, that's one of the considerations. There is something like a recording studio, or for a band. We pitched that to a local group here that had a band that was like a garage band, and we said we'd throw together something like this. They might need a little bit more room, but the acoustics would be exceptional. So yeah, this is just set up as like a bedroom here. Not big, doesn't have any plumbing or anything like that, but it's perfect for something in the backyard. Here's an office I've set up here. So that's just to give you an idea of what we're starting with. This is the kind of the stuff that I work on a regular basis, is just this modeling. So this is using our panels right here. So you can see I have, this is the base panel right here. So this is what majority of the wall is made up of. So in total, there's about 26 of those in the wall that make up this house. This is a 530 square foot house. But you can see basically it's plug and play, where it's like I figure out the size that we want to use or the general layout, and then I see how it works with the blocks that we have. So we have preset sizes, and then openings like doors, we have just lack of block essentially with the headers is all that's required. So that's kind of what we're working with.
So kind of like a modular house, essentially.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. So these just get dropped in place. They can be lifted with they can be lifted by hand. I've moved them. It takes 4 people, and you can move them around enough to put them in place, and they can be lifted. It's not going to be fun, but it's definitely doable. They can also be the easiest way would be if you have a forklift or a skid steer with chains and just lift them in place. But you can grab one off a trailer and place it within a matter of minutes. It's pretty quick. So you can build a structure extremely quickly. You don't need a crane or anything like that to actually build it. And so we're trying to pitch. We'll be working on some advancements as we go, but right now we're just pitching like a hip roof. Then it goes directly on our wall system, and we'll have plans and things like that for
So what's holding those in position? Is the top sill that holds those in position?
You say in the panels themselves?
Yeah, I
Right.
was going to say, how are those anchored to the foundation?
Yeah, so there's a couple different, depending on the type of foundation chosen. So this one, I just threw a slab on here. We would typically propose a pier and beam if you want to eliminate the use of concrete in your structure, in which case you'd have a wood structure and you can just use structural screws right in the foundation. Same would go here. There's some options to do some Tapcon type screws, anchors we can do. We just need a little bit more planning of placement of those because of where those need to sit within the panel, where the panel needs to be set into it. It's a bit more planning, so there's more to consider there. So that's how you'd anchor to the foundation, and then connecting the panels. There's studs on both sides. You can see. I'll move one of these out again here so you can see better. So there's studs. The exterior is structural. Interior is mostly just to secure the
Also,
or to give something
yeah,
to
that-
secure to.
that's the hempcrete, that interior.
So they're framed in wood then?
Yeah,
I'm trying to-
it's traditional
Okay.
wood framing. This is all hempcrete all the way through. So hempcrete in between the double frame. And
How
then
thick is
hempcrete
that?
on it. This particular one is 9 1/4.
Okay.
And then we'll do up to 12 inches for residential.
And what kind of R value?
So the R value is going to be, these are just about R2 or just under, based on what I'm getting from initial testing. I'm going to get some official testing done, and our mix will change over time. But yeah, so about R2 is what we expect. We don't have to do any exceptional
Per inch or for the whole?
per inch. Yep. Yeah. Good question.
Yeah.
So that's the purpose for the 12-inch, is for the residential purposes, to meet code here. That gets us R24, which is over a code requirement. One thing to consider with hempcrete though is R value should essentially be looked at just to meet whatever your local code is at this point, because you get a lot of unrecognized or unmeasured benefits from switching to hempcrete in regards to performance. And the biggest piece of that is your thermal mass. So your wall has enough density to where you can store thermal energy in that wall. So if you're comparing the R value of hempcrete versus spray foam is going to have higher R value. But when there's temperature fluctuations with spray foam, you're basically at zero. And the indoor climate, the only way to change that temperature is by turning up the thermostat up or down, and then that insulation basically helps keep that temperature regulated. Somewhat with hempcrete, with thermal mass, you can take advantage of some solar heat coming in from the sun, so you can capture that heat, and that will dissipate through your walls. And so you have a little bit of assistance towards regulating the temperature, because you're capturing and slowly dissipating that heat over time, to where you will have less energy needed for controlling indoor climate because of that. So that's something that needs to be calculated and quantified. And that's one of the things that the USHBA is helping work towards with some of their testing parameters that they're putting in place. And that will help kind of better highlight how this actually performs compared to like a traditional insulation.
So do you sell it? We're looking at this panel here. Is that the way you sell it, as a panel, or do you sell it different ways?
No, it comes just like this. So they'd come on oversized pallets, stacked and ready to go. There's a couple of different sizes. That's the primary panel there, and the sizing is primarily for the ability to handle, because hempcrete's pretty dense, pretty heavy. So the idea was you can either go really big, and then you'd need a crane, which is what like a lot of modular builds will do, where you just have full wall size, or we'd go smaller, more portable like this, which we've seen successfully in the straw bale community. They're kind of edge more towards this size, and I think it makes sense for especially where we're starting with where the market is. There's a lot of people that are very interested and want to have hands-on experience, and maybe not do the whole project by themselves, because working with hempcrete's very labor intensive, takes a lot of time, makes a mess, but they do want to have some say in their build as far as maybe design and assembly, and that becomes accessible, where if you can drive a tractor, or if you have 4 strong friends, you could assemble your own structure essentially.
So that's 8 foot high. How wide is that?
This is 3 foot.
3 foot. Okay.
So you chose this versus coming up with blocks, because I've seen those block designs. What's the pros and cons of the two different?
Yeah,
methods?
good question. So it depends. The block game, as I say, is changing every day. So I'm gonna stop sharing here for a second. So blocks, it's really tricky because there's a lot of different technologies coming online here in the last 6 months or so. But traditionally speaking about blocks, you still have to have your wood structure built, and then you'll end up putting those blocks on either side of that structure. So you can build, and then you can decide to fill that frame with hempcrete cast in place by placing it by hand if you want to do the whole thing, or you could do that traditional insulation and a traditional finish on one side, which is where a lot of the builds have gone up till now. So building with blocks up till now has kind of been a hybrid approach where you're having a envelope of hempcrete around the structure and then a traditional structure inside, or vice versa. Some blocks now are coming online where you have a different structural system than wood, where you might just have cement or concrete piers as your structural component, and then your whole wall can be hempcrete. So those are different. Those are going to change a bit. The main reason we went with prefab though is because one, it's still going to be faster with the build. So on site building with blocks, that's still going to take a crew, and that could take up to 2 weeks of building still. Building with these panels, even a full-size house with 2 people as opposed to 5 or 6, you should be able to put a house together in less than 2 days, probably about a day and a half of assembly.
Huh.
And you also have still the traditional kind of aspect with, if you're building with just hempcrete, if it was just the blocks, you have to start to consider how are you going to hang your kitchen cabinets, things like that, or bunks, any kind of anchoring points. You need to plan that out well in advance. Or if you want to do siding besides plaster, there's a lot more extra considerations that go with that, versus this is still a traditional framing where you can do any kind of siding you want on the exterior, including lime plaster, and then the interior you'll still have studs available for any kind of, there's no extra planning needed for that sake. So
Matt, you said the exterior, so that exterior does need to be covered in some fashion, either with plaster or vinyl siding or something like that, right?
Yep. Ideally, it would be a lime plaster because it's a very complementary to hempcrete building. It works well with the properties of hempcrete. You could do a siding also. That's probably the cheapest option right now, especially since we don't have a ton of plaster specialists in the US compared to other places. But yeah, so hempcrete it will hold up in various climates. And so like my first build in North Dakota was it's like a woodworking shop now, but we built it and I left it completely exposed for a year just to see what would happen. And it held up fine. But the performance wasn't as good as it could be because hempcrete is not airtight. It's an super aerated infill material. So there's lots of micro pockets of air in that wall. So you still need some kind of air barrier or something to give you your air tightness without affecting permeability too much. So a lime plaster is perfect for that because it'll block wind, those kinds of things, and full
Fireproof
water.
too, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Versus
So
if you had vinyl siding, that would burn, right? So
yeah, that's one of many reasons not to go with vinyl. But yeah, the lime plaster would be the most protective as well in that regard. And same with like pests, things like that. It's basically stone. So like I have a hempcrete cabin and I have most of the wall plaster, but the bottom half is cedar. And the cedar is my my weak point because it's out in the it's out on a ranch and there's lots of wildlife and stuff. And so there's always animals trying to get in there, bugs and stuff like that, versus the lime essentially becomes stone. And it's very protective.
So what's your cost to build this versus regular stick and block or a brick build kind of thing?
So hempcrete compared to like traditional building, you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to change it's ever changing because the supply chain. But if numbers were to stay where they are now, plus or minus the last couple of months, my estimates are around like 10 to 12% when I run those calculations of doing like bare bones build to building with hempcrete, traditionally cast in place, and you're doing some of the labor yourself where you can cut down on costs. You're going to be probably 10 to 12% more for that hempcrete upfront cost. But there's another aspect to it that I was kind of alluding to with the performance, where you can't just look at R value, for instance, to where after a few years, and this is why I'm helping with that comparative testing project for USHBA, is so we can actually quantify those numbers. And so I'm doing a build in May that's going to be tied to this, but we want to figure out what that, so you're going to pay initially, you're going to pay say 10% more for a hempcrete house, but the performance that you have every single month, year over year, it's going to perform better and require less energy to maintain. And so you're going to have a point at which they cross and the hempcrete becomes, the ownership of hempcrete becomes cheaper. My estimate is 5 years or less, but it's going to depend on a variety of factors. And that's kind of a guess on some assumptions right now. So we will see though. So I have a build coming up in May where we're doing that exact thing, where we have two 300 square foot builds. One's a traditional build with bad insulation, siding. 15 feet away is the exact same design, but with hempcrete walls and lime finish. And we'll be doing some in-depth analysis and long-term testing to kind of help get to those points.
We had a question come in. Are the studs on 16-inch centers?
So for my panels, they're just over that, just based on size. I do have a couple different panel designs where we can go wider. You just have the sacrifice of more weight in that case, where I do have a 4-foot one, which would be 16 on center. They don't have to be based on IRC code. It could be up to 24 on center as long as you don't have a second story, which we don't in any of our designs. And it's not going to be proposed for hempcrete for a while for more than single story, just so we can kind of get our foot in the door. It's the easiest, lowest hanging fruit to stick with single story homes. You definitely still can. You just need special approval with the help of like a structural engineer, for instance, would help approve those plans.
So another question came in. Can you use a router or to run wiring and plumbing? So how do you run the wiring and plumbing?
That's exactly how you do it. So we will get to the point of pre-planned utilities, but it will come at an expense. There's a lot of design work that goes into making that happen. And then all of a sudden I have, let's say that one build I showed you, I have 26 of these base panels. All of a sudden, each one of those panels has a very specific spot it has to end up in order for everything to line up internally. Versus right now, you could place any of those 26 base panels in any spot that requires a base panel, and there's no difference. So there'll be some downsides to it, but it will eliminate needing to do any work after. But for now, what we do recommend is just taking a router with a 1.5-inch bit and channeling on the interior surface the exact path that you want, and then placing a flex conduit or a PVC conduit in that channel and run your electrical. And then you just put a lath over it and you'd run plaster and you'd never know it's there. And then it becomes embedded in the wall.
Now you're in North Dakota, we're in Michigan, and these are heavy. So what sort of shipping charges are involved in something like this?
It's going to depend on the size of the project. That the first one, that 150 square foot one, I got a couple quotes for different areas around the region. The thing to consider is that for shipping, I can't remember the number offhand. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but the consideration is that when if I was gonna build on site for someone, and most of the builds are out of state, I'm gonna order my lime, probably exactly how much I need or just a little bit more to the site. I'm gonna order my herd directly to the site. Those are both gonna have their own shipping costs, and I'm not gonna get a price break because I'm building just one structure. So you're gonna have extra costs associated with your materials from the get-go from a traditional build versus our prefab. I'm buying enough raw materials for 10 to 15 builds at a time. So I get a decent price break and shipping break. And then when I have, when I'm shipping these for logistics, I have some business contracts with logistics to where I can get better pricing. And so it doesn't quite even out to the same cost, dollar for dollar for logistics, but you definitely get a good amount of value out of it. And the fact that you're getting the shipping or the wood framing as well within it, as opposed to having to have that shipped or picked up and assembled on site before we got there. So price is about even out on logistics, or just a little bit more for the panels, but it's nothing too crazy.
Yeah, and you save on the labor too. We need to take a brief break. Blaine, you want to thank our sponsor?
Yeah, I certainly do. I want to thank Midwest iHemp Expo for sponsoring the show. In May 21st in the Lansing Center is where it's all going to happen. A great networking opportunity for everybody to come. We're going to have a lot of training. We're going to have a lot of speakers. Saturday, the expo is free to get into, the exhibit hall. Friday, it's just a $50 charge. And then there's the all access pass. Right now, we have a sponsor going on for the booths and for the tickets and everything. We figured since everybody else is crazy and has March Madness going on, that we would too. And even if your brackets are broke, which mine certainly are, most everybody's is probably, this is a great deal and are going to be a lot of fun. Now, Friday night, we're having the Hemp Awards. That's anything that's made out of hemp. So certainly, Matt, you should enter this into the Hemp Awards. Now, we don't need you to ship us a panel. That's okay. We can do it. Going to ship us a little piece of a panel. That might be all right. But so definitely do that so we can get the word out for you on that. So it's just going to be a fun time. Great way to network. And this is where the magic happens, folks, when we get together and we talk about the power of hemp and cannabis. This year, we brought in ASA, which is Americans for Safe Access. They're going to have some training on Thursday, as well as we're also going to have some training on Thursday about getting third-party audited. So just, again, 3 days of a great time for everybody to get together. The Hemp Awards on Friday night, going to be a lot of fun there. We've got a DJ coming in, and this is where we'll give away the awards. So we'll get not only do you get exposure for your products, you also get a nice little award if you're one of the top 3 for that. And then Thursday night, we're having a meet and greet. That's going to be free at the Radisson Hotel. That's our hotel of choice because it's connected right to the Lansing Center. So get your tickets now while the March Madness is going on. So, and Mike, I'm going to say it, and it's going to be hard for me to say, but go blue. You guys are still in it.
I'm sorry, Blaine. You'll have to say that again. I don't think I heard you correctly.
No, I said that once, Mike, and then
okay, all right.
So you have it recorded. So.
You might also add that
and I want to thank.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say, you might also add the Midwest iHemp Expo is the folks on the other side of Point 3, which is my audience, are also invited to attend, right?
Absolutely. That's why we brought ASA in for the medical side of things this year. So there'll be quite a few cannabis people there as well, displaying their wares and talking about their stuff. So we're really excited to have that.
A lot of education on the whole plant.
Yep. And there will be an opportunity for people for expungement for cannabis use. So that'll be free for people to come in if they want to register and get signed up for that and start that process. So we've made that available as well. So, yep. So good time, fun time. Everybody come out and join us, have some fun. It's in May this year, a little different. We're gonna have it in January, but I'm glad we moved it to May. So, yeah.
Amen. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I also want to thank Lancaster Farms for their podcast that they do. They're one of our media partners, and I just want to thank them for their sponsorship of promoting the event as well. So
yeah, Eric Kurlock's going to come play with us in May. That'll be fun.
Yeah,
good guy.
Yeah. So a lot of good speakers. We've got the list on speakers up there. We're adding to it all the time. There's a few spots yet that we're filling in, but we'll have that full agenda up there real soon. So with that. Yeah, Mike, you've got some things you want to share with us? I've got some more news, Dave, we'll come back to, but.
I do. For the 50th anniversary, I'm told 51st, whatever, of Hash Bash at the University of Michigan Diag is April 2nd. And one of the things we're obviously participating in that. We're a sponsor booth, all that jazz. But one person that I guess I'm not surprised she's participating is Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, who's going to be there speaking. She's up for re-election, obviously. The cannabis community helped get her elected in 2018 because she was friendly towards cannabis. So she's going to be there, as well as a lot of other people, because it's been 3 years since we've had this event because of the pandemic. A lot of pent up people want to get out there and whoop it up. And this is a big event to do some whooping at, I'll tell you. I was at the event in 2019 and there was a lot of people there. We're talking 20, 30,000 people. I'll bet it'll be every bit of that this year. It's a pretty much a day long event. We're participating in what's called the Monroe Street Fair, which is the commercial part of the program. The Hash Bash is still the protest, blah, 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 all that stuff. Going back to the days when I was a student at the University of Michigan. I won't go how old I am.
Way back then.
Yeah, way back then. Yes, I know. We were riding dinosaurs, but we were still having the Hash Bash. And so, but the Monroe Street Fair is the commercial side. There's, it's going to be 50 or 60 sponsors there, booths, whatnot. We're one of those. We're partnering with Charlie Strackbine, who's the co-producer of the show. And so we'll be there for that part. And like I say, Dana Nessel. Normally, in the old world, I would not want to be smoking in front of the state's chief law enforcement officer, but these are different times now, aren't they?
Yes.
So good for her.
We'll be there joining you that weekend. We're going to be with ASA, I think, at their booth. We're helping them out. So
okay. Yeah. Also wanted to mention, social equity has been a big hot button issue for the folks that are covered by the MRA, soon to be the CRA, which would be Cannabis Regulatory Agency, as well as you guys. You will anything consumable adult kind of put it in your body. It's going to be part of the CRA. So whether it's CBD or anything else for that matter. But anyway, they're having a big social equity online Zoom conference on Friday at 10 a.m. And so if they're going to be doing some legal work there, the lawyers are going to explain how that program can work and it's really aimed at people of color or other minorities or whatever that have been so heavily impacted by the war on drugs. And so they've, if they've been busted or something, then it's difficult for them to get into the legal business. And so the social equity program will kind of help working on that. It's kind of ties in with the expungement thing, it's all part and parcel of the same thing. So if you want details on that, mimarijuanareport.com. Again, it's free. It starts at 10 a.m. on Friday. You can watch it on Zoom. Pretty simple stuff. And I would be remiss if I didn't do a shameless plug for Michigan Marijuana Report. Right now, we're having a very special package right now that we're offering for 90-day trial. That includes a membership to the Small Business Association of Michigan. We are now the cannabis strategic partner for SBAM, which represents 30,000 businesses across the state. And again, the details on that particular package, that's actually, if you were going to join SBAM with the package we have included, it would cost you $249 a year, but it's bundled into our package, which is a 90-day sponsorship. And again, those details are mimarijuanareport.com. A heck of a deal. And check it out. And if you have any questions, you just hit me with Mike at mimarijuanareport.com. Be happy to answer those. I guess I'm done with my shameless plug now. So go ahead.
Good job.
Okay. So just a little bit of news. I'll have some more at the end of the show we'll talk about. But I bet everybody didn't realize that Tuesday, March 22nd, was World Water Day. Did you know that, Dave?
No, I did not.
Well, there you go. See, now some of you got something for trivia. There's a Water Day. World Water Day recognizes the importance of fresh water around the world. Only 3% of the Earth's water supply is fresh water, and only 0.5% of that is available for our use. So just remember that when you're drinking and doing that tap water, that only 3% and only 0.5% of that is available for our use that's in the world. So interesting on there. FSA is accepting applications for farm loan assistance internships in Michigan. And you can find out more about that. We'll have it listed on the site, but you can also find out more about that at about www.usjobs.gov and just search for farm loan assistance. Still need everybody's help. There's a lot of bills that we're trying to get through Congress to help get the CBD regulated. So regulate CBD now is another bill we have going on. Plus, I know they're talking about the Safe Banking Act is also going on, and we're trying to get the level from 0.3 to 1%. So a lot of bills we need your support on. Please make sure that you're contacting your representatives on that so we can get that through. And just a little teaser, we're going to be talking about a little ginger later on when we do the, see, Dave, I brought my hat today.
Oh, good.
Kind of like.
What was her name again?
Ginger.
Her name was Ginger, you said? Or no, a different. Okay, sorry.
Always like Marianne.
Yeah.
Well, let's get back to Matt.
Yes,
Yeah, Matt.
we're devolving quickly here. So yeah, back to Matt.
So Matt, we have another question.
What do we? Okay.
We have another question, Matt. Could you use hempcrete as filler for ICF construction?
Gotcha. That's an interesting question. It's possible. I've heard of people trying it before. I don't know how well it went, but I know of some people that have tried it. The problem is concrete is not very permeable, and you need that permeability to really take full advantage of the benefits of hempcrete. And so you're going to probably have moisture issues without special consideration for having concrete right up against hempcrete. And so I would say it would not be feasible without some special considerations and probably a change to your composite used on the outside part of the block.
So Matt, you're doing a good job making rectangles. Have you considered doing triangles and doing the dome structures?
My wife wants me to do a hexagon build, but it requires a specific, so I have, the reason I stick to rectangles is because that corner is super strong. The corner piece I have, hexagons are strong as well, but I'd have to design a new corner piece that's at more than a 45-degree angle. So it's possible. It would be, if anyone's got a cool project that would be interested in that, I would definitely give it a shot. It gets a little bit more tricky when you're talking about doing the entire dome, like with roofing and stuff like that. So,
and if somebody comes to you with a house design, do you design? Yeah, it clearly has to be one story, but can you design, like somebody comes up with a blueprint and says, "Can you duplicate this in Hempcrete?" Can you do something like that?
Yep, exactly. That's what I do a lot of the time. That's what I enjoy doing most, actually, is trying to, so either if you have a picture of a house finished product of saying, I saw this in the catalog or online and I want to have a house like this, I can make it work with the panels and design that, essentially the guts of it. Or if there's blueprints, I can see what's done. There's usually a little bit of modification of saying, if this wall is this long, I might have to shrink it or add 3 inches to make it work without having to make a custom panel. But with intolerance, yeah, we can pretty much do anything.
Well, Mike made an assumption there that it has to be one story. What, is that true?
It doesn't have to be, but it takes an additional level of effort for getting approval for that. And so like the USHBA, we submitted an appendix to the build IRC for approval for being recognized as an official building material, essentially. And you provide details on best practices, those kinds of things, so that people can follow those without having to go through a bunch of hoops every time they build. One of the criteria in there is to stick to a 1-story building. And because it's a lot easier there's a lot more forgiveness and variability acceptable in a 1-story building as opposed to 2. And so there's already a good handful of 2-story hempcrete buildings in the US, and obviously overseas, there's no problems there. They're building more than 2-story. It needs to be a case-by-case basis, because it's hard to set that standard for people that are just coming in and saying, I want to build with Hempcrete, never done it before. And I'm going to go for a multi-story right off the bat. It's just a unique product where you want to make sure you have a well-established process in place for people to follow.
Okay.
Let me also ask you, you're in tornado country out there. I'm not saying will it withstand a tornado, but will it better withstand high winds than say a wood structure or not?
In theory, it should. We haven't had issues in North Dakota with wind. I don't think there's been anything bad enough to cause issues. But I mean, the lime plaster is going to be stronger than siding that's tacked in place, for example. But also you have the density of hempcrete, so it's a pretty heavy structure. It's a lot heavier than.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's a heavy structure to begin with, right?
Yeah, so you have a lot of mass there that kind of keeps everything planted, where you're not going to feel like I'm in a house that's from the 70s, and when it gets really windy, I can feel some little adjustments, and the house kind of makes some noises. In our cabin, you can tell that it's windy if you can hear it, but like there's no waver to it or anything like that. It's pretty solid.
Matt, are you having problems with local ordinances and being able to build these structures you got to go through?
Not too bad. So the most recent one I did was the one in Fargo, North Dakota here. And it takes extra time for sure, because it's something that I would say most building officials haven't seen or come across. So there's that aspect of getting them up to speed and comfortable with how it performs, what it is, and showcasing what it's already done. So building up that relationship and that knowledge from the ground up is really the part that takes a while. But once they understand it and understand what you're trying to do and see that it's already worked well within the bounds that you're trying to set for your own project, they're usually pretty receptive. So the build we just got approval for to do in May in Fargo, that took like probably 6 weeks of back and forth, and there's just a lot of questions and articles and research that went back and forth to get them comfortable.
How much is one of those panels weigh? You said 4 guys. Is that like 500 pounds, or how much is one of those panels weigh?
They're about 380.
Oh, man, dude.
What? I didn't hear it.
Oh, me?
Yeah, about 380.
He said about 380.
Yeah,
380.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would take a few guys to get that in place, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and we'll.
Go
Go ahead, Blaine.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say we're so when people are buying these kits, there's obviously going to be some back and forth for any of these buildings, and some of the times we'll be on site depending on proximity, and for an additional fee if needed, we'll come out and do it. But they're pretty straightforward to assemble, and if you have to do it by hand, I'll show people how to do that with tutorials and stuff like that, with kind of like using hoist kind of systems with ropes and stuff like that, as opposed to like getting 4 people behind it and pushing it. That's not going to necessarily be the safest. So like there'll be some best practices in place. Still not the easiest method, but it's doable.
Excellent.
So we've had a question from somebody, Clyde, asked on your figure, on your design you had, there was some dynamic supports on the corners. What are they, and are they permanent?
Good question. Yeah. So any structure that's going to be built with hempcrete is going to need some kind of additional bracing. I don't have any official bracing in that drawing. It was just some lines of showing how far it would go in that particular instance. But in general, you do need some kind of bracing. So probably the same for you, but here in North Dakota, the form of bracing when you're building is just the sheathing that you use. Like when you put on your plywood or your OSB on the exterior, and then you have sheathing on the interior, and that's sufficient because we don't have to worry about earthquakes. It's really just wind load and snow, those kinds of things. So sheathing is sufficient, but with hempcrete, you don't put sheathing on there like you wouldn't put sheetrock or OSB on there because it inhibits the performance of the hempcrete, and you're going to have moisture issues most likely with both of those examples. But in order to satisfy that requirement that the IRC has, you need to have additional types of bracing. So the most common would be a lead-in bracing, which is just a strip of 1x4, usually running from top corner at a specific angle down to cover a handful of studs.
Now, I'm assuming these panels can't be put on the ground like for a basement, but I'm assuming no reason you couldn't put a basement underneath of this and then build on top of that, right?
Yep. Yeah, you can do it any foundation you want, really. We just need to know about it ahead of time so we can make plans for it. But yeah, if you want a basement, you absolutely could. And then these would just go around the perimeter, and there'd just be special consideration for the thickness of the wall edge that these are getting set on, because they're 9¼ inch thick or 12-inch thick, as opposed to a standard wall that's much less than that.
The demo house you've been showing us on your 3D model, what sort of ballpark figure would something like that cost? I'm not going to pin you down, but give me a range or something.
Yeah, so that one, so the thing to consider is you're going to have we're kind of coming into the market where the market's at right now for hempcrete, which is really supports subcontractors. So at this moment, people will have a foundation built, they'll have their framing done. A subcontractor like me will come in, do the hempcrete, build the walls up, and then our job's done, and someone comes and finishes the roof and all the finished detail. That's what the market is most commonly seen right now. With this product, kind of the same thing, and we're just trying to eliminate the whole back and forth and shrink the amount of time that our subcontractor piece takes, while also taking part of the framing aspect out as well. So we're just supplying the wall systems at this time. And then so foundation's still needed first, any foundation you want. We supply the wall systems, and then roof gets built after that. And then finish work can be done. So just for the walls when they're unfinished, and we prep them for finish, depending on what finish you want to do, something like that, that's 530 square foot, probably be $15,000 to $18,000 for building your exterior envelope of your building.
That's not bad.
Yeah, so it's pretty close to that, is probably right in line with, or possibly even cheaper than doing like cast in place. And that's our goal, is to be competitive with the other methods of install while giving you a significant advantage.
So how did you address the issue of shipping and being able to keep those panels structurally secure?
Yeah, so that's something we're still working on. I have a long journey planned with a handful of panels in a truck next month. We've done some preliminary testing on that, move the panels around quite a bit, but the main thing is going to be, so people have asked before, why are we doing panels as opposed to doing like a set structure that's already built and then just shipping it as a pod that can just be set in place. The thing is, when you're assembled, you're going to get a ton of racking from transportation and movement vibrations, and there's nothing supporting the system except for the connection points at that point. So as opposed to the panels, when we ship them, I actually have these little samples right here. So this is a 1/12 scale panel right here.
Oh, cool.
And so when we're shipping those, the main thing is going to be your contact points. So if you're shipping and I have pressure on all hempcrete, there's nowhere for it to move, jiggle loose, or any pieces to break off. And when they're touching together and you have compression there, it's basically like one solid continuous hempcrete block on these pallets. And so I'm working through the configurations of how to properly ship those and get the most contact points without having to like cover them in plywood or anything while they're shipping. But it's mostly been a non-issue as long as you can keep pressure on the hempcrete and keep it from vibrating or
I got an easy road trip you can do in May. You could bring about 4 of those panels. You could set it up in the corner of the booth out there at the Expo. Yeah.
Nice.
I like
show people how easy it is to do that.
Yeah,
There you go.
that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Matt, are you looking to license or franchise your technology? Because the transportation cost is the big killer with something like this. So the more you're distributed around the U.S. with production, the more competitive you'll be, I would think.
Yeah, for sure. The ability to cut down on shipping, as well as having to, if there's materials available in other regions where these are being sold, it makes most sense to use those materials versus shipping to me, building it and shipping it out. So that is a long-term goal for us, is to find strategic partners to place these around various places within the US. Right now, we're working through some operational efficiencies to make it worthwhile and easily replicated. Because right now it's a pretty manual process. There's a lot of automation in mind right now that we're working on, but it wouldn't be as easy to scale if we required everyone that's doing it to do it by hand. There's a lot of variability there.
All right. Well, we really appreciate your time today, Matt. How do people get a hold of you, and what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I would say the easiest way to get in touch with me would just go to my website, homelandhempcrete.com. And then there's a couple different places for just general inquiries on the homepage. There's a form to contact me, my contact info, and then there's also one for specifically for the modular building. There's a form for that to get in touch.
Excellent. All right. Well, stick around.
Well, Matt, we wish you success as you move along your path there. And again, I hope you're thinking about coming out to the Expo so we can promote that for you. So.
Yeah, that'd be great. And thank you all for having me. It was good talking to you guys.
Yeah. So now it's time for the Hemper and the recipe.
It is. A couple of bit of news, though, I want to share first. So one of the things we're working on here in Michigan, too, is that we're looking at doing a feed bill in order to be able to use the hemp grain for livestock feed. And the senator out of Pennsylvania has introduced a bill there in the state. And it's a great thing. Lancaster Farms has a podcast on this where they interviewed her. So I would highly suggest people might want to let's take a listen to that. You can find it by Lancaster Farming. They have a podcast there for that. And let's see what else we got going on. Yep. So everybody is out of NOCO this week. So we hope everybody has a good chance. It's really going to put a big shot in everybody's arm when you go to those events and come back for sure. Also, we're looking at doing a Hempcrete workshop here in Michigan. I don't know if we got all the
April 30th.
There we go. April 30th is when that's going to be. And we'll have more details about that. So you can come out and learn a little bit about how to work with Hempcrete. So
it'll be a Grow Green. I think they're in Novi. They're here in southeastern Michigan.
Yeah. So looking forward to having some fun and warm weather coming. So
get our hands dirty with some hemp.
Yeah. So Matt, this is what everybody really tunes in for, Matt, just so you know.
We're still waiting for ginger, though, but go ahead. So
yeah, well, here it is.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Carrot ginger soup. See, little teaser there. Carrot ginger soup makes up to 6 to 8 servings, and in cooler weather, which we're still having this week. I know spring's coming, but it's still a little cooler weather. Or whenever need a bit of extra strength, sweet root vegetable soups are just the ticket. And a bit of ginger to stimulate the circulation, and hemp seed for essential fatty acids, and you've got a rocket fuel in a cup. That's how they do that. So.
Nice. And it's from the Hemp Nut Cookbook.
Yep. A great cookbook for sure. Hemp Nut. We love the recipes they've got in there. We've got all these recipes up on the website. So if you ever want to go back and look for something, this is one of the great ones here. So pretty easy recipes, some extra virgin olive oil. You could also substitute that with an onion, cloves, some sea salt, a little bit of fresh ginger juice extracted, tablespoon of mirin, 4 cups dried carrots, 1 peeled and diced butternut squash, 5 cups spring or filtered water, half a cup of shelled hemp seeds, 1 to 2 scallions, thinly sliced and on the diagonal. So the instructions are all there. You put it in the pot, simmer it for a while. Again, it's a pretty easy, simple recipe. So I would highly suggest that you give that a try. If you like a little ginger, a little carrot, there you go.
All right. Excellent.
Okay.
So I want to thank you, Matt, for taking time out of your day to help inform us and help educate everybody on what's going on there and your panels. And next week, Dave will be doing the show. I'm going to be traveling again next week, so I don't know if I'll be able to make the show, but Dave's going to have a real interesting show next week for sure. David Mike. David Mike Show.
David Mike Show.
Yeah, there we go. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy.
Thanks, Matt. All right.
See you next week.
Make it a great week.
All right.